That sounds good. I'm kind of tied up all morning.
I can believe it. These are tough times for mortgage companies.
Thank you.
Hey, I just
got back from Austin last night.
Did you go to the? I just. Bob Cook got back last night. He just came back yesterday.
Yeah. It was
The chance of doing us some good if we.
I think he does.
your work might pay off. Yeah.
All right, I want to call this meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board to order. Mr. Berman, any public comments?
No public comment.
Have you had an opportunity, gentlemen, to review the minutes of our last meeting?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Election of officers. I will defer to the board, but I think we have three appointments coming up. Raymond, when is that going to be on council? Do you know?
Sir, we don't know, but hopefully within the next week or two.
Okay. What's the board's desires? I understand that the last time we had an election, it was for a one-year term. Is that correct, Raymond?
That's correct. As the initial board had one-year terms because of the staggering, this next election will be for two-year terms for each of the officers.
Okay. What is the?
I would suggest we table this until after the appointment process goes through City Council for the remaining positions on the board.
And that makes sense because I believe Mr. Berg, Mr. Payan, and Joe's vacancy are up for renomination. And I believe
That is correct.
Mr. Payan is our secretary right now, correct?
Yes, sir, that's
So
correct.
and I think he expressed interest to stay on the board as well, right?
Yes, sir.
So I don't think there'll be any surprises, but it would probably be best, I guess, if we wait. I think
The only point I would make is a point of correction that I believe that the terms would have to be for 1 year so that if you have staggered terms and there are members of the commission that are only going to have 1 year in extension, then you can't elect them to a two-year term unless we're for certain that in a year they're going to get reappointed.
Right. Well, the bylaws are currently written so that they are two-year terms with the recognition that there may be an issue every year. Now, we could certainly revisit the bylaws. In fact, there are a couple of areas that I wouldn't mind taking a look at.
I think that might be prudent.
Sure, I can do that. I'll ask the governance committee to look at that. In fact, we have a number of policies that I'm putting together to route through the governance committee, and we can add that as well.
Okay.
Move to table item number 6.
Thank you. The motion's already made.
Or 4.
Seconded.
I'm sorry. A motion to table?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
From
sorry.
David.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Okay, number 4 is tabled. Item number 5, update, discussion, and action on the pass-through toll projects identified within the 2008 Comprehensive Mobility Plan. Loop 375 Northeast, Loop 375 interchange at FM 659, and I-10 at Loop 375. Mr. Tejas.
Yes, sir. This is just a very brief update. Between the last meeting and today, we have gone before the Texas Transportation Commission, and they have granted the RMA $2.2 million for pre-development and pre-construction work for these 3 pass-through toll projects. So I just wanted to brief you all that had occurred, and if you remember at the last meeting, the board also authorized the execution of work authorization number 1 with the general engineering consultant, and they are on board and they are reviewing these projects as we speak. So everything is up and running. I just wanted to brief you all on that.
Okay. Any questions, comments? There's no action on that item, so item number 6, update, discussion, and action on the toll projects identified within the 2008 CMP, Loop 375's Southern Corridor Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and Northeast Parkway Phase 1. Mr. Tejas.
Yes, sir. This project is somewhat similar to the pass-through project in that we are seeking preliminary funding from TxDOT to begin the pre-development, pre-construction work on the toll projects as well. In fact, we have submitted, and I forget the exact date when the board authorized the submittal of the application, but an application is before the Texas Transportation Commission next week for an additional $1.1 million to develop really the regional toll plan. What we'll be looking at are all of the blue projects in the Comprehensive Mobility Plan, and the GEC will, and of course, we'll come back to you all with work authorization number 2 to bring on the GEC to develop that work. What they'll be looking at is each of the individual projects in the blue category, and they're looking at them with regard to staging, cost estimates, and all relative project information. So we'll be back to you with that. I did want to brief you, though, because this will be going before the Texas Transportation Commission next week, and I'll be there to monitor that as well.
2 questions.
Yes, sir.
There's no timelines on these, on the toll projects?
No, sir. No.
So they're just as these evolve?
Yes, sir.
And has there been a reconfiguration of the viability of these projects based on economic conditions, today's economic conditions versus those when they were originally established?
No, sir. But part of what the GEC will be doing with the 1.1 million is very loosely. Now, I don't want you to think that it will be an actual feasibility study with regard to the economic viability of it, but they will be looking at each of the individual projects and which make most sense and how to try to package those from an economic standpoint as well.
And all the GEC funding is coming directly through TxDOT, not
Yes, sir.
from TxDOT, not
It will
and through us.
through this equity application.
So the CRRMA is not obligated in any way for any of the GEC's expenses today?
No, sir. They will operate similar to the project development agreement in that whatever work, the invoices that are passed to us, we will forward on to TxDOT, and they will review and approve.
Just for clarification.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, comments? None? Item number 7, discussion and action on the appointment of Representative Pickett to the House Transportation Committee. I believe that's Chair of the House Transportation Committee, and the reappointment of Senator Shapley to the Senate Committee on Transportation and Homeland Security. Raymond, these are the motions that we need to consider.
Yes, sir. In discussions with the chair, we felt that it was appropriate to express the RMA's obviously approval of these reappointments, but more importantly, to congratulate these individuals. I think that their appointment is important for this region, especially for an entity such as us, which is so heavily involved in transportation and mobility issues in this region. So I prepared draft language for a couple of resolutions for these appointments.
With your permission, I'll read those motions to you. First is for Senator Shapley. Entertain a motion to authorize the chair to execute a resolution expressing the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority's support of the reappointment of Senator Shapley to the Senate Committee on Transportation and Homeland Security for the 81st legislative session of the Texas Legislature, and congratulating Senator Shapley on this very important appointment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Excuse me.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. For Representative Pickett, entertain a motion to authorize the chair to execute a resolution expressing the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority's support for the appointment of Representative Pickett as chair of the House Transportation Committee for the 81st legislative session of the Texas Legislature, and congratulating Representative Pickett on this very important appointment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? None. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, I just kind of want to bring you up to speed, not necessarily on everything that transpired as far as the chamber was concerned, but El Paso days in Austin were February 17th and 18th. There was a large contingent of business people from El Paso, as well as the mayor, all of the city representatives with the exception of Representative O'Rourke, County Commissioners Dan Haggerty, Veronica Escobar, and Willie Gondra were also there. And I'm sure I've missed someone, but there was a huge turnout of people from the El Paso area. I attended, and as far as transportation issues were concerned, we met with Governor Perry, with Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst, and we also met with Executive Director Amadeo Saenz with TxDOT, and kind of as far as the governor and lieutenant governor, we expressed our desire to make sure that we continued to have a full bag of financing opportunities. We expressed a desire that there not be a diversion of the gas tax, which total dollar amount is probably $600 million out of transportation, as well as the other items on our legislative agenda. As I understood it from, and I'm going to let Raymond, I'm going to let you cover the stimulus breakdown, but it looks like that the stimulus package is going to be somewhere around $2.25 billion. It's kind of still in the formative stages as who gets what, and but there are some pretty specific rules and some timelines that have to be met in order to qualify and utilize those funds. So with that being said, I believe that we are in a very, very good position to potentially be able to leverage whatever monies we have at about a 10-to-1 ratio. And you know, anytime you can use those financing sources and get to that level, I think we're showing our worth to the region. That's pretty much all I have as far as a report on that. Raymond, you want to cover some of the other items?
Sure. We're here in the Executive Director's Report. If you note under 9A, I passed, as part of your packet, you'll see a TxDOT breakdown of this stimulus package. It's actually, I think it's a really good one. If you note, the final column over to the right is the final numbers. They were comparing the House proposal versus the Senate proposal, and the final is in the right-hand column. And you can review that at your leisure, and feel free to give me a call with any questions that you have. One thing I did want to bring up to the board, though, was something that the regional MPO did recently with regard to attempt on the region's part to try to maximize some of these stimulus dollars. What the MPO did was basically make a request, and actually I should back up for a second. The way that, and I'm speaking very generally here, but the way that some of these highway and bridge stimulus dollars are coming down to the regions is that they're broken out into separate packets, and a portion of that will go to TxDOT for discretionary use, and a portion of that, and then a separate portion then goes directly to each of the MPO throughout the state. This state, early on in the discussion, and this number has since changed, but early on we were looking at an allocation for the region for the MPO of about $19 million. So what the MPO did as a body, and in fact the vote was unanimous, was to send to TxDOT the proposal that the region request additional funding for the completion of the Americas Interchange project. So if you remember, the first two direct connectors for the Americas project are actually part of the Comprehensive Mobility Plan, and the RMA, this group, is charged with completing that. The financing for that is $50 million through the Transportation Reinvestment Zone, which the city has already created, and $20 million through the pass-through toll project that TxDOT has allocated for the region. So essentially what that means is the region, through the MPO, has pooled its money to try to get more stimulus funds by saying the locals are putting in $70 million to complete 2 of the 8 direct connectors for Americas, And beyond that, the MPO has now said we're also putting in that $19 million that we're anticipated to receive through the stimulus, and we're putting that forward and saying to TxDOT, will you please fund the remaining 6 direct connectors? So we feel as though we have a very strong proposal to TxDOT, and we're hopeful, and I understand that at next Thursday's TTC meeting, the Commission will actually make a determination with regard to each of the proposals that are before them. Obviously, the stimulus bill was signed, so that there's a clock that has already begun ticking, so they need to act fairly swiftly. Thursday, again, is the TTC meeting, at which they'll identify the proposal that will be awarded funds. Friday is a special MPO meeting of the Transportation Policy Board for them to basically digest what the TTC has agreed to with regard to our request and move forward from there. So that's a real brief overview of what's going on with the stimulus project.
Chair. Raymond, just for clarification, these interconnectors can be completed within the 3-year time life that the money requires?
Well, and we're looking at that. Our GEC, thankfully, through the project development agreement, part of that scope includes a review of the entire interchange, because you have to look at the entire interchange. You can't just build 2 of them in a vacuum. So what our GEC is doing currently is reviewing that to make sure that all of these, that the numbers still work, that the timelines can work, and that everything works.
Right.
We believe that it does, but that's our professionals are looking at that now.
And they're as close to being shovel-ready as they can be, right? They've cleared
Yes,
all the
sir.
hurdles through the MPO, all the studies, all the requirements?
Well, of the utmost importance with regard to timeline and shovel-ready, that terminology is environmental clearance, and this project is environmentally clear. There are some right-of-way acquisitions that will be necessary, but we believe that through design build and other mechanisms, and incidentally, TxDOT retains those requirements anyhow, but we believe that we could address those if they become an issue.
Have we identified a start date for the project?
No, sir.
Mr. Calvo, could you come up? Eduardo, thanks for joining us. I really didn't have anything. I just wanted to put you on the spot. And obviously, we're working hand in hand with TxDOT on this project, and I just kind of wanted to get your read. I know you've been very involved. Saw you in Austin yesterday, and is there anything that you can bring forward as far as from your viewpoint where TxDOT is, and just kind of your thoughts on where we're going with this?
Sure. Again, for the record, Eduardo Calvo with TxDOT here in El Paso. Yeah, just to build on what Mr. Tellez just said, in terms of where we are in the region's proposal to the Commission to get the remaining 6 connectors of this interchange built. Again, I think it's a very good regional, a very solid proposal, pooling our local resources, leveraging, if we can use that word, and ask the Commission to recognize this effort that this region is doing and putting our resources together and completing this very important project. I think there's a lot of procedural things that need to get done so that we meet these deadlines. The completion date, we're more concerned with the deadlines at the back end, which is, for example, completing the project 3 years in a 3-year time period. I think we can do it. Certainly, a design build model is going to help us a lot to achieve that. The letting of the project, in other words, to obligate the funds and meet the deadline, which I believe is a year that we have. What needs to happen for these funds to be obligated is that we need to have a design build contract in place by then. So we've got to do a lot of preliminary work to take us to that level, to that point.
But I think one of the critical things that we covered very briefly last night as you were trying to get out the door and get to your home and family, and I was holding you up, but forgive me for that, but it was significant because I think in a lot of circumstance people are under the impression that these monies had to be contracted within 120 days, And as I understood from you, based on the other projects that are going down throughout Texas, that just half the money had to be contracted with 120 days, and the balance of the 50% of the TxDOT funds had 1 year.
Right.
Is that correct?
That is the guidance that we've gotten from the administration so far. There is indeed this 120-day, clock ticking, where 50% of the economic stimulus funds need to be obligated. However, my understanding is that this is a statewide requirement. There's a big project, I believe, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that would take care of that 50%. So at the state level, we're going to meet that 50% obligation deadline within 120 days. So pretty much we're off the hook. So then that 120-day deadline does not apply directly to us. The next deadline, which is obligating the funds within 1 year, is what we need to be very aware of to make sure we don't extend beyond that, and the completion date of the project, 3 years.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Calvo?
The cost of the remaining 6 connectors, what is that total cost?
We're talking in the ballpark of about $206 million total project cost. But take away the $50 million in TRZ that the city has pledged for that, the $20 million Category 2, which would be part of the pass-through toll agreement for the original CMP project, minus a $19 million. So I forget the exact number, but it's in the ballpark. What we're requesting in the ballpark of about 100 and is it 180, Raymond? Or I don't have the table here in front of me, but it's a significant amount.
Okay.
And again, the important thing here is that when we were talking about the CMP project, we're building just 2 connectors, but what we're looking at right now is to building the entire, look at this as a whole project, which is a $280 million project. So by pooling our resources and putting together the CMP project with this economic stimulus package, we can get the whole interchange built all at once. And that's really the exciting part.
And if I understand correctly, there's a high degree of confidence that the TTC will go ahead and approve our leverage of those funds? Would that be correct? Not, we can't say yes, but we're all led to believe that there's a high degree of possibility that will happen.
Again, I cannot speak for the commission, but I'm certainly hoping on a
We'll
personal
certainly know
basis.
next Thursday.
Okay. Because I believe Pickett called it outrageous, right? What we're proposing. Because it is so outrageous, he felt that we've got a shot at getting it done. Correct?
Well, I think when he referred to this proposal being outrageous was the amount of leverage. Pledging the $19 million and getting 180 something in addition to that. It's not that outrageous when you count the $50 million that the region is already putting in, plus a $20 million. I think it's a very, very good proposal, a very solid proposal, but the commission has the final word. But we're very hopeful.
Any other questions? No. Thank you, Mr. Calvo. I'm sorry.
Sorry, that was me. For the record, the number that we've requested is $187 million. And I would also mention I'm in Austin next week for the TTC meeting, and on Friday I have a meeting with our GEC, with our financial advisor, and also our attorney to begin putting all of the policies and steps in place so that we can begin moving forward on this very, very quickly.
Very good. Mr. Gilliard, could we hear your read on where this is from the MPO's standpoint?
Referring to, let me first explain that we're having a special meeting February 27th, as your executive director pointed out, and the purpose of that meeting is really to take all of the projects from this region that the policy board prioritized at their last meeting. Now we have to come back and do all of these changes to our long-range transportation plan, the MTP, the short-range plan, which is the Transportation Improvement Program, to put those projects in their proper order in each one of those documents. If that's not done, no shovel will be big enough to turn any amount of dirt. Right. So that's really the purpose of the meeting Friday, a special meeting. And the project that you've discussed for the last 10 minutes, The Joe Battle I-10 interchange is the number one priority project identified by the MPO for this region. $206 million. It's leveraged, or better yet, instead of leveraged, the now N word is pooled our resources. And so we don't want to confuse anyone and make them think it's a tax or or toll, I should say. And all I can say is, we've been at this a long time. I've never seen the optimism as high as it is in this community. I think we finally have turned the corner in El Paso to realize that you can't go to Austin with a tin cup asking for money thinking your priorities and your needs are any more greater than Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin. You got to bring something to the table. And we're playing that game, and I think everyone in place is playing that game extremely well. From your executive director to the Regional Mobility Authority, this committee here, the MPO, we're finally on the same page, I think, as a community. So we should all applaud ourselves for that effort. There's no more backstabbing and not working together and trying to damage each other's reputation. We're doing our part. You're doing your part. The monies are there. They're coming. And this community should be very proud of where it stands today. It took a very long time to get there.
Very good. Any questions of Mr. Gilliard?
I just had one quick question. Looking at this, and I hadn't seen these numbers before, but approximately 30% or $675 million is allocated to the MPOs. So is this $180 million coming out of that MPO money, or how is that? Or where does that come from in the stimulus package?
Well, that's where the stimulus, when it comes down to the states, then it breaks into separate pots, and one pot goes directly to TxDOT as for discretionary use, and that's what we're asking for $187 million from. The other pot, I guess, goes then down to the individual MPOs, and that's where we were originally anticipating about $19 million coming to the region. So it's the combination of the two pots.
I just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Right. That's about 55% discretionary, and I think 45% goes to the MPOs. There are 26 MPOs in the state of Texas, and so divvying up $675 million 26 different ways, it doesn't go as far as it sounds like it should, but our portion of that as an MPO region is $20 million.
Any other questions? Thank you, Roy.
Thank you.
I think if I recall, Texas was the number 2 recipient of funds. I think California received like 3.9, 3.8, somewhere in that neighborhood. But Texas was a strong number 2 as far as allocation. 9B.
Sir, the RMA, as with all other RMAs in the state, are required to complete annual audits and provide those audits to the Texas Department of Transportation. So in accordance with that, we brought on Peña, Briones, McDaniel, and company to do an audit of fiscal year 08. And Mr. Rene Peña is here to answer any specific questions, thankfully. And I would thank him publicly for coming down on such short notice. I barely got a hold of him probably about 15 minutes ago. So I thank you for coming down. If you have any questions, Mr. Peña is here. Again, though, this is a requirement by state statute, and we've provided already to TxDOT, so we are in compliance.
How are you, Mr. Peña? Thanks for joining us. I know that most of us that are sitting up here are not used to looking at a balance sheet where the net assets are a significant number with little brackets around them. When I first looked at this, I thought, what in the world have I gotten myself into? But as I understand it, the expenses that we have are listed, but the trustee funds are not listed as assets.
That's correct.
Okay. Could you kind of go over the methodology there?
Okay. Exactly. You have a promise that at some point in time, and that is when the project is substantially complete, that the state will fund you for the costs that you are incurring. from services rendered, i.e. the taxes or tolls that come from the street, if you'd call it. But at this point, because under accounting guideline, there's a condition. The condition is you must substantially complete this project. So at this point, what has happened? The authority has issued a bond. It has incurred debt. It has received funds for those debt, but it hasn't sold any item. And then secondly, indirectly, it has contributed to the state the services because it's building a street, and in building the street, they're not retaining that asset. So as soon as they pour that concrete, it goes over to the state owns it, we don't have an asset. So what the authority has done at this point is incurred a large debt, the brackets, has given away the asset, the pouring of the concrete, and will be receiving in the future, upon the substantially completion of the project, the revenues to pull itself out of this debt obligation that it has incurred. And again, accounting rules, trust me, we had to read this 10 different times because we don't come across this that often either. But we did find the specific verbiage that, no, we do not own, the authority does not own this asset. Yes, the authority is obligated on the bond. Yes, there is a promise, but the promise has a contingency on it. And until that contingency is completed, a contract obligation, basically. At that point, we will recognize the revenues. So theoretically, 2 years from now, when substantially complete, then we'll have a, quote, windfall of a promise, of a pledge, of a contract to pay the obligation that you have incurred.
Okay. And that basically is covered on page 13, item number 4, the reimbursement commitment?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just to clarify, so going forward, since we're going to, our next project conceivably could be these connectors, that's going to have the same impact on our financials, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So you're going to be in an extreme bracketed deficit position as this project goes forward.
So we're going to have to get used to doing that.
Ralph, we're just going to have you personally guarantee all of that.
Well, you know what? My financials look like this now, so it's nothing new.
Okay.
Just a question, Raymond, and thank you, Mr. Pena, not regarding the financials. Are we through with the financials? I just have a question regarding the procurement.
We will be if we
Okay.
accept them.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
The only other question I had is, Mr. Pena, under no circumstances do you think that this would preclude our ability to go forward and incur additional debt? In other words, no lender, and this is just for the record, no lender would look at these and then without looking at the entire package and your notes, which are obviously very integral in reading these documents, but no lender would then make it difficult for us to be able to finance any additional projects, pass-through projects.
I don't believe so. And again, as you said, integral part of this are the notes that, in my opinion, clearly identify, yes, we will be funded in the future. Yes, there is that clause that says we have to complete it. Is there any question that the completion wouldn't be achieved within the time frame? No. And so I think with those three answers, there shouldn't be any problem going forward.
Okay. Corky, maybe First Southwest could also address that from a bonding standpoint. Considering these financial statements and considering the promise to pay and the fact that we already have the bonds, do you anticipate that that would have a negative impact on our ability in future projects?
I wouldn't think so.
If you don't mind,
Kind of look at that as an asset.
Corky, if you don't mind, could you?
I'm Corky Hall, First Southwest Company. No, I think, I haven't seen the audit, number one, but as it's clearly stated in there, that is something that's coming into the authority upon substantial completion of the project. And your next project, I assume, will have the same built-in type of arrangement. And so it shouldn't negatively impact your financing, in my opinion.
Okay, and can, just also in general, maybe, could you just kind of give us a general indication of where the bond market is right now and what we might be looking for on a go-forward basis?
Let's see, where's that crystal ball around there? Somewhere. The market is still in much turmoil.
Right.
The market was down. The stock market was down a tremendous amount this week, and it's again today. And but the bond market, the interest rates are in pretty good shape right now. We're seeing a lot of opportunities to refund outstanding bonds that because the rates have dropped down. And in fact, we just presented one last night where you can get a 6% PV savings if they were in the market today. And so how long that's going to last, I don't know. But I think the climate's going to, with the stimulus package, it should keep the market within a range where we could do financing in a favorable way.
Okay.
But who knows, really?
Understood. Thank you very much.
All right, sir.
I move that we accept the audited financial statements.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Before we move on, just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Raymond, I thought we had agreed we would contract this as much as possible on a competitive basis going forward. I don't think the board knew that we were undergoing an audit. 1, 2, that we had engaged an auditor, and nothing against you, Mr. Peña, at all. Nothing. You did a great job, by the way. Okay, but I thought we were our intent to be as transparent as possible. We would contract. I know you have some discretion as to what you can and cannot do, but even within those services, going forward, are we going to actually put out our piece out there to give everybody a chance at the ring, so to speak?
Absolutely, and I should apologize to the board. The problem that we had this go-round was that I was hired September 1, and that's the beginning of your fiscal year. So we were on a really tight timeline to get these out the door. So I used the discretion, as you mentioned, within the procurement policy to actually go out and secure the group to handle this one. But yeah, absolutely. In the future, and in fact, you'll see a number of RFPs coming forward, and one of them will include auditing services. So yes.
Okay.
But unfortunately, like I say, and you'll see, actually, I had to do the same thing with the development, and you'll see one of the next items is the strategic plan.
Yeah, nice work.
That plan, and actually if we'll kind of use that to move into the next item, which is 9C, the strategic plan is also required by state statute. We have to provide a copy to the Texas Department of Transportation, and you have to do that within a certain timeline from the end of your fiscal year. So we were caught in that situation with that as well. So I had to go out and use the discretion from the procurement policy to hire a group to handle the strategic plan.
That's fine. Going forward, we are going to.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you.
But, Mr. Chair, if I might suggest, and Raymond also, that through the Finance Committee, we appoint a audit committee that can then issue or come up with a recommendation for an RFP that could be issued at that time. And,
Absolutely. I can do
and
that.
yeah, Renee, thank you. I, too, want to say that was an excellent job and a challenge. So, but that's just a suggestion. It's not a
Absolutely.
motion.
We can do that.
Any other comments?
Well, with that, we'll move again, as I mentioned, into 9C. You'll see in your packet, and we have some actually available for the public if they're interested. We have received the final version of the 2009 to 2014 strategic plan for the RMA, and you'll recognize the content. The content was approved by the executive committee and then furthered on with a recommendation for approval to the full board, and you all approved this in, I believe, December of 2008. So you've approved the content. This is the actual final version. What happens now, and in fact what I was discussing with the chair prior to the meeting, was the cover letters. We'll be providing these. Now we have to, by state statute, provide a copy of this to the Texas Department of Transportation, which we will do over the next day or so. Beyond that, we will be providing copies to the mayor and city council and the staff members that are involved here at the city with transportation. We're providing 30 copies to the El Paso Metropolitan Planning Organization for each of their members and their staff, the Transportation Policy Board members and the staff of the MPO. We're providing copies to, obviously, the state senator and each of the state representatives, the county judge and the county commissioners, and I know I'm missing a few, the Borderland Mobility Coalition, the Greater El Paso Chamber of Commerce, and anyone else you can think of. We've run enough copies so that we have plenty to provide to the community, so that the community is aware of what this organization is looking forward to over the next 5 years. So those letters will go out over the next day or so.
Let's see, you said, and we had talked about number of copies. I mean, Roy's here. Roy, is 30 copies enough, or do you need more? Okay.
I believe there's 20 some odd TPB members, and then beyond that, the staff of the MPO. So, but we have plenty. So if anybody needs any additional, please feel free to let me know.
And Ralph indicated that if you want his autograph, his
available.
picture, he's available after the meeting.
I actually have a comment here on this report. It appears that there are two people in here that have this really bright smile, and then the rest of us don't. What were you guys thinking about when they took your picture?
Well, actually, we got the photograph of you and Tony from the post office.
Okay, I'll forward that to Tony then, all right?
I thought I was getting glamour shots there, Raymond. You want us to approve this, or?
No, the board took action in December, so we're good on that. I just wanted to present that publicly to each of you. And of course, if you all want extra copies to pass around, let me know, and I can get those to you right away.
Okay.
I believe that takes us to our last item, which is 9D, which is the annual report. Another statutory requirement of RMAs in the state is that we produce an annual report each year, basically breaking down what happened in the last year through this organization. I'm currently in the process of developing that now, and we'll be routing it through the executive committee here shortly, basically the same process that we used for the approval of the strategic plan. So you'll be seeing that shortly. In fact, I may ask for a special board meeting of the RMA to approve that. But that's coming. So if you have any questions or anything catches your eye in the strategic plan that you didn't necessarily like, whether it's photos or otherwise, let me know. We can redo those.
Please.
That's being put together now, as I mentioned. So,
Okay.
subject to your questions, that's all I have.
Any questions of Mr. Tesh? Mr. Burnett, thank you very much for joining us. I know that we're looking forward to an update on 601 at some point. Last time I was out there, there was a lot going on. So, very good. And also, Mr. Berry, we saw you sneak in, and we thank you very much for joining us. If that concludes our business, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
I like these.